Hello, SubSummit, and welcome to 6 brain science secrets that rev up response. So I'd love to start off this afternoon with a short story. And this is a story about Leicester. And if you don't know Leicester, Leicester is actually a city about an hour and 10 minutes northwest of London, England. And there's a lot you can find in Leicester. And among the things that you can find in Leicester are a wine store and a university. And as these things happen, one day the researchers at the university decided to run an experiment at the wine store. This is what they did. They played nothing but German music in the background. And they watched as 73% of the customers purchased German wine. And then they changed the music. And they played nothing but French music in the background. And they watched as 77% of the customers purchased French wine. But here's where it gets interesting. Because when they asked customers why they chose the wine they did, virtually no one mentioned the music. So, what can we learn from this little story? Well, one thing we can learn is people do strange things, don't they? People do strange things. They walk into a wine store to buy wine. They walk out with French wine if the music is French. They walk out with German wine if it's German. People do strange things. But it turns out that science actually offers a really good explanation as to why. It turns out that up to 95% of purchase decision-making takes place in the subconscious mind. This is a quote from Gerald Zaltman. He wrote the book, How Customers Think, and he bases that statistic on the work that he and a number of behavioral scientists have done into how people make decisions. And what they found is amazing. Because what they found is very often people don't make decisions. What they do instead is they rely on decision defaults. What's a decision default? It is an automatic, instinctive, reflexive response. Humans have developed these over the ages as a way to conserve mental energy, because people couldn't possibly weigh every bit of information before making a decision, or we'd never get around to making any. So instead, we've developed these hardwired behaviors. And what happens is we kind of cruise along through life on autopilot. And when we encounter a certain situation, we just default to these hardwired behaviors, giving the matter at hand little, if any, thought. Look at it this way. If I were to jump down off the stage and chat with you, and I sneezed, what would you do? You're like, oh my gosh, Nancy just gave me COVID, ew, right? But no, pretend COVID didn't exist. If I sneezed, what would you do? You would automatically, instinctively, reflexively say, bless you, or gesundheit, right? You wouldn't go, oh wow, Nancy just sneezed. What should I do? Should I say something? Should I not say something? I think I'll say something. Ooh, what should I say? No, you would automatically respond. And behavioral scientists have identified hundreds of these automatic responses that your customers and prospects have. And some of them influence what they read, who they trust, and when they buy. And that is why they're so important to us in the subscription marketing industry. So what I'd like to do today is I'd like to share with you 6 ways that you can trigger these automatic responses. 6 ways that you can use what science has proven about human behavior in order to influence it, in order to overcome the friction that can slow people down or even stop them from responding, and actually prompt people to respond the way you want them to without even thinking. So how does this sound? Does this sound good? Thank goodness, because that's what I've prepared. Okay, we're good. All right, so let's get started. Secret number 1 is something called the Endowment Effect. This is a term that was coined by Richard Thaler. Now, Thaler actually won the Nobel Prize just a few years ago. And here's what Thaler found. He found that if there's something that we want, if we want to get something, we want to acquire it, well, obviously we value it. That's why we want to get it. But once it becomes ours, we place even greater value on it. Once something is ours, we overvalue it. So how do we use that in our marketing? Well, let's look at a few examples. Here's something from a company called Lot 18. They sell wine, and they want me to buy a bottle of wine by 11:59 tomorrow. Now look, I know we've just met, you don't really know me, so I'm gonna put this out there. I like wine, not that hard to get me to buy a bottle of wine, okay? But I love the technique they used. Look at what they said. They told me that I have $15 of unused credit in my account that will expire at 11:59 tomorrow. They did not say, hey, buy a bottle by 11:59 and we'll give you $15 off. Buy a bottle by 11:59 and we'll take $15 off. Buy a bottle by 11:59 and we'll send you a $15 rebate. No, they told me that I currently had in my account a $15 credit. Now, mathematically, we all know it's the same thing, whether I'm applying $15 credit or whether they're giving me a $15 discount. But psychologically, these two are worlds apart. Because the credit was already in my account, it was worth more to me, and it was going to expire at 11:59 tomorrow, and I didn't want that to happen, so it made me much more likely to buy that bottle of wine. Or here's another example. This is from UPS. They say, hey, Nancy, we've missed you. You haven't used your account in a while. To keep your registration active, log in. Do nothing, and your registration will expire. And what do you suppose happens when somebody encounters a message like that? Right away, they react against it. Right away, they're like, oh, no, you don't. That is my account, that's my registration, I set it up, and you can't take it away from me. And if I have to log in just to prove to you who's boss, well, then that's what I'm going to do. Well, here we've got another example. This is a true story. A number of years ago, I'm doing my Christmas shopping, and it becomes very clear to me that nobody is going to get their gifts on time because Nancy was a little slow, okay? I wasn't buying gifts quickly enough. And I started to sweat it. I'm like, oh my gosh, they're not going to get their gifts on time. This is not going to be a happy holiday. Unless I sign up for Prime, and Prime promises to get them there on time. So I do, I sign up for Prime, Christmas gifts show up on time, we have a wonderful holiday, everything is good. And then some months pass, and I find I'm just not using it. So I think, I'm gonna cancel, I'm gonna go to the website, I'm gonna cancel, and I get a refund for the remaining months. So I make my way to the website, I find the cancellation page, and look at the question that pops up. They say, when do you want to end your membership? Not, when do you want to cancel? No, when do you want to end your membership? So they're really kind of digging in on that endowment effect. And then they do something that's brilliant. They give me two choices. I can end now, which is precisely what I had come there to do, or I could end later. And they gave me the date, and the date was actually the original expiration date. Not only did I choose end later, I remain a Prime customer to this day, okay? They did a great job. So here's your friction reducer. Remind people of what they stand to lose. Remind people of what they stand to lose. Everything they've built up, working with you, using your products, using your services, remind them of what they stand to lose. This is particularly valuable if somebody's on the fence or if you're trying to retain them. All right, our second secret is something called the motivating uncertainty effect. Researchers at Chinese University in Hong Kong have found that people are 68% more likely to complete a task with an uncertain reward. So what's an uncertain reward? Well, you're not sure if you're going to get a reward, or you're not certain what the reward is going to be. Turns out that people are 68% more likely to complete a task with an uncertain reward. So you can incent somebody. You can say, if you do this, I'll give you that. That's an incentive, and we know that that works. But people are much more likely to do something when they're not sure if they're going to win or what they're going to win. Behavioral scientists have found that it's almost a reward in and of itself to find out, ooh, am I one of the winners? What did I get? So how do we use this in our marketing? Here's something from Sephora. And they invite young ladies to apply Sephora makeup, take a picture of themselves, and upload it to the Sephora site for a chance to have their look featured on the site. And it's a win-win for Sephora, isn't it? Because the young ladies go out, they buy, they apply the makeup, they're not going to be able to return it, and because people are 68% more likely to complete a task with an uncertain reward, they're more likely to try this than if people just were told, hey, upload a photo and you'll see it on the site. Or here we have something from Hello Bello. And they invite you to spin that wheel to see, what are you going to get? $5 off, 10% off, 15% off? You don't know unless you spin, and your finger is just itching to give that a spin. You want to find out, what am I going to get? And then once you find out, the endowment effect kicks in, and you're like, oh, I got that 10%, that 15% off. I want to use it. It's mine, right? Or here we have something from FabFitFun. They're offering you a mystery bundle if you sign up. You don't know what you're going to get. You want to find out what you're going to get, though. You're much more likely to take advantage of the offer. So here's your friction reducer. Give people the chance to win. Instead of giving them a discount, give them a chance to win a discount. Finding out if they're winners is a reward in and of itself. All right, our third secret is something called availability bias. And I know Chris promised you no more airplanes, so just bear with me for a second here. But here's the thing with availability bias. Behavioral scientists have found that people will judge the likelihood of an event happening based on how easily they can think of a relevant example. People will judge the likelihood of an event happening based on how easily they can think of an example. So let's pretend you're someone who's never flown. You have never set foot on an airplane. And someone says to you, how safe is it to fly? Well, you have no firsthand experience, but you will have an opinion, because right away, as soon as you're asked, you're going to start to think about those news stories that you've seen on TV or read in the newspaper or seen online about airplanes. And you're going to think, wow, some of them have mechanical problems. Some of them actually have pieces of the engine fall off mid-flight. Some of them crash. Sometimes there's fatalities. Oh gosh, there was that one that crashed into a mountain in the Andes and the survivors were eating each other. Whoa, no, okay, not very safe to fly, you might think. But let me assure you, it's perfectly safe to fly. You, like me, are probably going to be flying home at the end of SubSummit. Very, very safe to fly. It's just that the news media does not report about the millions and millions of safe landings because it's not news. So, okay, let's bring this back. What does this have to do with us in marketing? Well, again, people are going to judge the likelihood of an event happening, and in our case, the event is their need for what we're selling based on how easily they can think of a relevant example. So before you ask them to buy, first get them to think of a time in the past when if they had already been your customer, it would have been so much better. It would have been great. It would have been convenient. Or get them to imagine a time in the future when they could see themselves benefiting from your product or your service, from the membership, from the subscription. Let's look at a few examples. Here's something from the Boston Globe, and they want their subscribers to buy gift subscriptions for people they know. But they didn't say, hey, buy a gift subscription for someone you know. They didn't even say, don't you know someone who might like a gift subscription? No, instead they said, Globe.com is an incredible gift for your, and then they listed 10 different descriptors. Your avid reader, your political junkie, your sports fan. The next thing you know, you have come to your own conclusion that you know up to 10 people that might like a BostonGlobe.com gift subscription. Why? Because you look at each of those descriptors and you immediately think of the person you know that matches it. Maybe your uncle's a political junkie. Maybe your grandfather's an avid reader. Maybe your kid away at college is a sports fan, right? Great use of availability bias. Well, here we have something from the American Dental Association, and they want their members to buy disability insurance. But the problem with disability insurance is if you are healthy, if you're able-bodied, you don't think you need it. You don't think you need it, and it's really hard to disavow you of that. So look at what they did. They kind of came in through the side door. They said, have you heard your colleagues, not have you, but have you heard your colleagues complain about low back pain, carpal tunnel syndrome? Next thing you know, the dentists are thinking, wow, last month when I was at the local ADA meeting, Dr. Smith from across town wasn't there. Somebody said she was in bed with back pain. Wow, this could happen to dentists. It could happen to me. Maybe I should look into this. Well, here we have something from FabFitFun, and they're advertising their digital luggage scale. And they say, you're at the airport, your luggage is overweight. You frantically start layering as many pieces as possible until you look like the Michelin Man walking through TSA. But when you read that, what happens? You immediately think of the last time you were at the airport, and they say, put your luggage on the scale, and you do, and you're sweating it. You're really hoping that you're not over, right? You're really hoping you're not overweight. Or maybe it takes you back to when you saw somebody down on their hands and knees, literally yanking stuff out of their suitcase and shoving it into their carry-on. Or maybe you did really end up wearing more things just so you didn't have to check them. But when you start to think about all those things, you also find yourself thinking, maybe I'd better get one of these digital luggage scales. Wouldn't be such a bad idea. So here's your friction reducer. Set the stage using relevant examples. You want to set the stage, lay the groundwork. You want to make people way more receptive to the message you're about to deliver. If you set the stage the right way, what it is that you're asking them to do is going to make perfect sense. You're going to be like, yeah, I really could use that. All right, the fourth of our 6 examples is something called the scarcity principle. And what behavioral scientists have found is if something is readily available, well, we may or may not want it. If we want it, we take advantage of it. If we don't, we don't. No big deal, right? Pretty simple. But just let people know that that something isn't going to be around all the time. Or it's not really available to everyone. It's only available to certain people. Once you do that, it's like a switch flips, and it suddenly makes people want what you're selling and want it badly, okay? You can take somebody from neutral to I've got to have it, just based on the scarcity principle. And there's 2 halves to it. There's urgency, limited time, limited quantity, and there's exclusivity, available to some, but not to all. It's like you walk into the break room at work, and there's a half a dozen donuts. So what do? You're like, oh no. I'm going to watch my weight, I'm going to be healthy. You walk in and there's 1 donut left and you're like, get out of my way, I got to get that before someone else does, right? There's only one. We want it. We overvalue things that are scarce. Humans love things that are scarce. We think they're worth more. Because if there's only one and we don't get it, it means we don't get anything. So how do we use the scarcity principle in our marketing? Well, one thing you can do is you can run a countdown clock. Countdown clocks are very visual and visceral reminders that you're running out of time. Each time one of those seconds rolls by, you know that that's time you're never going to get back. And the closer that counter gets to 0, 0, 0 across the board, the more urgency you feel, the more you feel that you better act now or you're going to be disappointed. There's a company called World Data, and they analyze about 6 billion emails every year. And they found that if you put a countdown clock in your email, you can get a 22% increase in your click-through rate. Pretty good, right? Now, you don't have to just do it in your email. You can do it on your landing pages, on your websites. Countdown clocks can be very, very motivating. Or here we have something from Jay Peterman, and they say, you better watch out. If you're holding out for this stuff to go on sale, don't. It probably won't be around that long. Now, that's a very human thing. That's what our customers and prospects do, don't they? They see something, they think they like it, like, well, I'll think about it, I'll sleep on it. Maybe if I wait, it'll even go on sale, right? And here they're saying, if you even think you want this, you better act now, or you're very likely going to be disappointed. Or here we have something from Walmart Plus, and they say, be the first to play new games on day 1. That is just oozing with exclusivity, isn't it? It's the other half. It's not scarcity. It's not urgency. It's the other half of scarcity. It's exclusivity. Do not underestimate the power of being the first to do something. As human beings, we all love to have things that our friends and family don't. We like access they don't have. We like information they don't have. We like benefits and perks that they can't get or that they're still waiting for. So there's just a huge amount of psychological power. This is like psychological gold here. Being the first to play something new on day 1. It's like, that really appeals to humans. So here's your friction reducer. You want to flag, highlight, scarce quantities, scarce opportunities, even scarce information. Behavioral scientists have found that people are actually more persuaded by information they believe is not widely available. So that means if you have the secret to something or the inside story or the real truth or the facts behind or something that's contrary to popular belief, people will be all ears. They want to know what you have to say. All right, our 5th tactic is something called labeling. And what behavioral scientists have found is when you label somebody as part of a group, they automatically start to behave like the other members of that group, even if they hadn't previously thought of themselves as part of that group. That's the power of labeling. So researchers in Chicago actually ran a very interesting study. It was shortly before Election Day, and so they interviewed a bunch of adults about the upcoming election, the candidates on the ballot, the questions on the ballot, and they also collected some demographic information and psychographic information. And then what they did is they took all of the answers and all of the data, and they pushed it off to the side. They didn't look at it. They did nothing with it. And instead, they randomly, and that's the key word here, they randomly put people into one of 2 groups. And they went to one of those groups and they said, you guys are the more politically active. And then they watched to see what would happen on election day. And what happened was 15% more of the people in the politically active group showed up to vote. Why? Because what would a politically active person do? They would vote on election day, wouldn't they? That would be consistent with the label. Now you may say to me, but Nancy, it wasn't a 100% increase. Fair enough. But if you could change a few words in your marketing and automatically get a 15% uptick, wouldn't that be worth it? Let's look at how some marketers use labeling. Here we have something from the Next Big Idea magazine, and they say it's the last chance special for fans of our club. And you're like, oh, wow, they consider me a fan of the club. I think I'll take advantage of this last chance special. See what we've got here. I'm a fan. I deserve it. Or here we have something from LinkedIn, and they say, Nancy, thanks for being an active member. Now, maybe I didn't consider myself to be an active member, but they call me an active member, and somehow I'm like, you know what, I guess they must be right, I am. And if I'm an active member, it would make sense for me to take advantage of this free upgrade and give premium a try, right? Well, here we have something from Hollywood Reporter, and they say, as an entertainment influencer, you know that industry news is critically important to staying on top of this business. And you read that and you're like, yeah, absolutely. I better subscribe. I better get my copy of Hollywood Reporter. So here's your friction reducer. Use labels that lead to the desired action. You want to label somebody in a way that's consistent with what you're about to ask them to do. So it just makes perfect sense that because they're a member of this group, they would take this action. All right, we're up to our sixth and final behavioral science secret that can rev up response, and this is something called anchoring. And what behavioral scientists have found is the first piece of information that people encounter, very often it's a number and very often it's a price. The first piece of information that people encounter becomes the anchor or the reference point against which they evaluate every other piece of information. So anchors are really important. Researchers ran a very interesting experiment around anchoring. What they did is they asked people to estimate how old they thought Mahatma Gandhi was when he died. But they didn't just ask the question that way. They asked the question one of two ways. Some people were asked, how old do you think Mahatma Gandhi was when he died? Do you think he was older or younger than 9? And other people were asked the question this way. They were asked, how old do you think Mahatma Gandhi was when he died? Do you think he was older or younger than 140? Now those two numbers, 9 and 140, not particularly helpful, right? Because if you know anything about Mahatma Gandhi, you know he was older than 9 before he passed away. And if you know anything about the human lifespan, you know that none of us have quite made it to 140 yet. But the anchors did have an influence, because the people who were asked, how old do you think he was when he died, younger or older than, than 9, they estimated he was about 50 when he died. And the people who were asked, how old do you think Mahatma Gandhi was when he died, do you think he was older or younger than 140, they estimated he was 67 when he died. Now that's a 17-year spread. A 17-year spread, and the only difference was how the question was asked, the anchors that were dropped in. So how do we, in the marketing and subscription and membership industries, how do we use anchoring? Well, if you have a variety of tiers, membership levels, products, you want to lead with your most expensive one. I know it's tempting to lead with our least expensive one because we don't want to frighten people away, but lead with your most expensive one. Here we have Wix premium plans. They start with $39. Some people will say, great, $39 seems fine. Other people, they'll be like, nah, it's a little expensive, but it suddenly makes that $22 look like a much better deal. If you start at $13, it's a lot harder to get you to $22, let alone $39. Studies have shown that if you lead with your most expensive price, your average revenue will be higher. Now, you may say to me, but I don't have a series of membership tiers or a series of products. I'm just starting out. I only have one. You can still use anchoring. Look at what this company does. They sell a mosquito repellent watch. So they describe the features of the watch, and they say, you know, with features like this, it wouldn't be surprising to see a price tag of up to $150. And then in the next paragraph, they say, but you can get it from us for as little as $39.99. And when you see that, you're like, wow. That's a great price. Now, mind you, they didn't say that they have a higher price version that goes for $150. They didn't say that their competition sells it for $150. They simply said it wouldn't be surprising to see it at $150, but it plants that anchor. If they hadn't, you might have read about the watch, and then you get to the $39 and you think, ooh, that's a little expensive. But because they anchored you on that $150, that $39.99 looks great. The thing you have to the thing you have to remember about your customers and prospects is they're not great with numbers. We're really not, we don't know what things should cost. That's why Fidelity is selling insurance. And the thing about insurance is we sometimes never buy it, or maybe we buy it once or twice, we don't know what it should cost. So they say, look, it's cheaper than a cup of coffee a day. We know what a cup of coffee costs, and suddenly we're like, oh, that's a good price. So what you want to do is you want to lead with high numbers, and you want to link to familiar prices. You want to make it easy for your customers and prospects to see the value, to see that things aren't going to be terribly expensive, that they're actually well priced. So we've talked about 6 key behavioral science secrets that will help you increase the engagement and response to your marketing messages. You want to use them where you can in your marketing. If you want to find out more about them, I highly recommend my book, Using Behavioral Science in Marketing. Paul Chambers, who you might know, says if you follow even one of the principles outlined in the book, it will change the course of your business forever. And the last thing I want to leave you with is not only a big thank you, but if you would like a cheat sheet that recaps a couple of the things we talked about, maybe adds in 1 or 2 that we didn't get to, take a picture of that QR code. We'll send you the link. You can download a cheat sheet for free. Thank you so much for inviting me here to SubSummit and letting me talk to you today. I really appreciate it.